My name is Margaret Chen, and I'm 62 years old. I've lived a full life, raised 3 children, built a successful career as a hospital administrator, and thought I had a solid marriage. For 38 years, I stood beside Robert, my husband, through everything life threw our way. Let me take you back to that evening. It was a Tuesday in late September, one of those perfect autumn nights when the air smells like wood smoke and possibility. I had prepared Robert's favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables, the recipe passed down from his mother. Our youngest son, Daniel, was visiting from Boston with his wife, Claire. Our daughter Sarah had driven up from Philadelphia. It was supposed to be a celebration Daniel's promotion to partner at his law firm. The dining room glowed with candlelight. I had set the table with our wedding china, the delicate pattern still beautiful after all these years. Everyone was laughing, sharing stories, when suddenly Daniel's voice cut through the warmth like a knife through silk. Either you give my wife your room, or you leave. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at my son, this man I had nursed through fevers and driven to soccer practice, whose scraped knees I had bandaged and whose heartbreaks I had soothed. His face was red, twisted with an anger I had never seen before. Claire sat beside him, her expression cold and entitled. She had always been polite, but distant with me. Now I understood why. Daniel, what are you talking about? My voice was steady, but my hands trembled. You heard me, mother? Claire is pregnant. She needs the master bedroom. It has the better bathroom, more space. You can take the guest room, or you can find somewhere else to live. I turned to Robert, waiting for him to defend me, to remind our son that this was our home. But Robert looked down at his plate, silent. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Sarah stood up, her chair scraping loudly. Daniel, have you lost your mind? This is Mom's house too. But Daniel wasn't backing down. Dad agrees with me. Don't you, Dad? Robert finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before, guilt mixed with cowardice. Margaret, maybe it would be best if we discussed this calmly. Claire does need special consideration right now. The words felt like physical blows. I stood there, looking at the faces around my table. The pot roast sat cooling, forgotten. My daughter's eyes filled with tears. My son's jaw was set with stubborn certainty. And my husband, the man I had loved since I was 24 years old, couldn't even meet my gaze. I took a breath, then another. I removed my apron, folded it carefully, and placed it on my chair. You're absolutely right, Daniel, I said quietly. I'll leave. Sarah grabbed my arm. No. You don't have to, I kissed her cheek. It's all right, sweetheart. Sometimes you have to know when a chapter has ended. I went upstairs and packed a single suitcase. 40 years of memories surrounded me, photos on the dresser, Robert's reading glasses on the nightstand, the quilt my grandmother had made. I took only what I needed. When I came back downstairs, Sarah was arguing with Daniel, but I walked past them all and out the front door. I got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Eventually, I found myself heading east toward the coast. I had always loved the ocean. As a child, my parents took me to the shore every summer, and I would spend hours collecting shells and watching the waves. I drove through the night and into the dawn. When the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, I was in a small coastal town I had visited once, decades ago. Something about it felt right. I checked into a hotel and slept for 12 hours. When I woke, I felt strangely clear-headed. I had spent years putting everyone else first, my children, my husband, my career. Now, for the first time in my adult life, I could choose for myself. The next morning, I walked through town and saw a for sale sign on a small cottage overlooking the sea. It had withered blue shutters and a front porch perfect for morning coffee. The realtor happened to be standing outside. How much? I asked. She named a price. I had money from my mother's estate, carefully saved and invested over the years. Money Robert knew about, but we had never touched. Always saving it for someday. I'll take it, I said. The realtor blinked. Don't you want to see the inside first? Yes, I said, but I already know. I'll take it. The cottage was perfect, small, but filled with light, with wide windows looking out at the endless ocean. It needed work, but I had time now. I had all the time in the world. I paid cash. Within 2 weeks, I had moved in. Sarah called me every day. Please come home. Daniel's being ridiculous. Dad's miserable. Is he? I asked gently. He had the chance to speak up, sweetheart. He chose silence. But don't you miss him? Don't you miss us?
I miss you every moment, I told her honestly.
You are welcome to visit any time.
But I don't miss who I had to be in that house. Daniel never called. Neither did Robert.
But Claire did, 3 weeks after I left, Mrs. Chun, she said, her voice tight. Daniel says you've bought a house. That seems rather impulsive, does it?
I was painting the kitchen a soft yellow. I rather thought staying for 38 years and leaving after one evening was the opposite of impulsive. She was quiet for a moment.
We didn't mean for you to actually leave. Then what did you mean, Claire?
We thought you'd take the guest room.
Stay and help with the baby. I set down my paintbrush. You wanted me to give up my bedroom, accept being pushed aside in my own home, and then stay to provide free childcare. When you put it that way, how else should I put it? She hung up without saying goodbye. The months passed. I fell in love with my new life. I joined a book club at the local library.
I started painting something I had always wanted to try, but never had time for.
My neighbors, Ruth and Tom, a retired couple in their 70s, adopted me into their friend group.
We had dinners together, took long walks on the beach, played cards on rainy evenings. I learned to be alone without being lonely.
I learned that peace is worth more than any relationship that requires you to diminish yourself. Sarah visited often, sometimes bringing her girlfriend, Maya, whom she had finally worked up the courage to introduce to the family. I feel like I can breathe here, she told me one evening as we sat on my porch watching the sunset.
Thank you for showing me it's okay to choose yourself. Then winter came.
Christmas was approaching, and I was planning to spend it with Ruth and Tom when Sarah called, her voice urgent. Dad's in the hospital. He had a heart attack. Everything stopped. Despite everything, Robert was still the man I had loved for nearly 4 decades. Is he okay? He's stable.
But he's asking for you. I drove back through a snowstorm, my hands gripping
the wheel, my heart a confusion of emotions. To the hospital. I found Robert looking smaller somehow, fragile in the star-white bed.
Daniel sat in a corner, his face haggard.
He looked up when I entered, started to speak, then said nothing. Margaret, Robert whispered. You came. I sat beside the bed. Of course I came. His eyes filled with tears.
I was a coward. I should have stood up for you.
I should have. He couldn't finish. I took his hand.
It felt thin, vulnerable. Yes, you should have. Can you forgive me?
I thought about forgiveness, about what it means to carry anger versus putting
it down.
I can forgive you, Robert, but I can't come back. That woman who would accept being treated that way, she doesn't exist anymore. He nodded slowly.
I understand.
I just needed you to know.
You deserved better.
You deserved everything. Yes, I agreed gently.
I did. Robert recovered. Daniel and Claire's baby was born in early spring, a little girl they named Emma. Sarah sent me photos. A tiny, perfect face, eyes squeezed shut against the light. Will you come meet her? Sarah asked. I did.
I drove to the house that used to be mine.
Claire answered the door, holding Emma.
She looked tired, overwhelmed. Mrs. Chun, she said softly. Thank you for coming. I looked at my granddaughter and felt my heart expand.
May I hold her? As I cradled Emma, Daniel came downstairs. He had aged, I thought. Fatherhood had already changed him, softened something in his face.
He said.
The word came out rough.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I was stressed about the baby, about money, about everything.
And I took it out on you. That's no excuse.
But I'm sorry. I looked at my son. I thought about grace, about how we all fail sometimes, about how love means holding people accountable while still holding them in your heart. Thank you for saying that, Daniel.
It means a lot. Will you come back?
He asked, hoping, his voice. No, I said gently, but I'll visit.
I'll be in Emma's life, in all your lives, just not the way things were before. He nodded, tears streaming down his face.
That's more than I deserve. Perhaps, I agreed.
But it's what I'm offering. I stayed for dinner. It was awkward at first, then gradually easier.
Robert and I were cordial, kind even. But the distance between us was clear.
We had both moved on, just in different directions. As I drove back to my cottage that evening, the sun setting over the ocean, I thought about revenge.
The image that had been shared with me, the woman's story of moving out and buying a house by the sea while they were being thrown out, wasn't quite my story. I didn't need them to be thrown out. I didn't need them to suffer.
That
was the thing about real revenge, I had learned.
The best revenge isn't punishment.
It's building a life so full and beautiful that you stop thinking about revenge at all. My life by the sea wasn't about what they lost when I left.
It was about what I found when I chose myself. Summer came again. I turned 63. Ruth and Tom threw me a party on the beach, and Sarah brought Maya, my art teacher from the community. Santa came, and the librarian, and the woman who owned the coffee shop where I spent my mornings writing in my journal. As the sun set, and we roasted marshmallows over a bonfire. I looked around at these people who had become my chosen family. I thought about the woman I used to be, always putting others first, always making myself smaller. That woman had her place. She raised good children and helped heal people through her work. But this woman, the one sitting on the sand with salt, air in her hair and paint under her fingernails, she was important too. The waves rolled in, eternal and patient. The stars emerged one by one, and I was home, truly home, for the first time in my life. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is show them that you love yourself too. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave, and sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well. My name is Margaret Chen, and this is my story.